Good morning. Welcome to Cranberry Country Chronicles. We're in Boston Harbor this morning, ready to embark on a 5-hour journey, and although you folks are only going to see about 30 minutes of it, a Southern Lighthouse tour from Boston down to Plymouth and Duxbury Bay. As we're looking at the photos right now, or the film footage, we're looking at Boston's inner harbor with a focus on the Seaport District over here on the right side of the screen. At the top of the building you see over to the right, you can see the smokestack or the exhaust stack from the Carnival ship Glory. This is Glory's home port during the summer months, and she is based over at the old former Boston Army base / U.S. Navy base during World War II and up right through the 1960s and 70s, and that is now home to the Boston Design Center. You notice the building with all the flags just in front of the smokestack or exhaust stack of the Glory, and you're looking at Commonwealth Pier number 5. This once was a large immigration and reception center in the heydays of the great ocean liners, such as the Olympic and the Lusitania, the Baltic, the Homeric, and many other ships that might have called on the port of Boston. Over here on our left, as we're heading down the bay, you'll see the high-speed catamaran waiting for its assignment to go into Boston Harbor's Long Wharf with another cruise boat behind it. And we're scanning over here on the East Boston shoreline, where once there were many privately owned shipyards that worked in conjunction with the former Charlestown Naval Shipyard. You notice these yachts right here, over here at Yacht Haven Marina, and there is Long Wharf. You see the steeple of the Old North Church off to the left, and the high-rise building in the background over there in Boston's North End. Here we're making our way down the harbor, and we have Gallup's Island and Lovell's Island. This is a section of the harbor known as the Narrows. This once was the former primary shipping lane for many vessels coming into and out of Boston Harbor, long before the Broad Sound entrance channel was opened on the north side of Boston Harbor. We're arriving at Boston Lighthouse. This is the main pier section, which has been restructured to allow public access to the lighthouse during the summer months. Still has its intact 1876 keeper's house, as you just noticed, the oil shed. Graves Lighthouse over there in the far channel on the north side of Boston Harbor at Broad Sound. And this is out of Brewster Island, the site of an observation post for the United States Coastal Artillery System, or the Coast Defense System. Even to this day, there is a group that calls themselves the Coastal Defense Study Group, trying to preserve the history and the memories of this once important section of the United States Army and the United States Navy during the wars to protect our coastline. The rocks you're looking at are shag rocks, the site of many shipwrecks, too many to mention. You can get a scale of the rocks by looking at the fishing boats around it. This is an immense stretch of rocks down the east side of Boston Light. This is the 1873 tower at Boston Light Station. You notice the Fresnel lens up there in the lantern room with this 15-foot addition below it. The addition was added between 1854 and 1857 to allow for the mechanism and the lens which sits atop the mechanism. There are a few buildings surrounding the tower. The one to the right is the fog signal house. There was a generator there at one time. Even to this day, there is a laser detector that can activate the automatic foghorn. This is Scituate Lighthouse, circa 1810, 1811. A very important coastal lighthouse in its time, but the sad reality of it is that Scituate Light actually caused more shipwrecks to happen than it prevented. We don't like to mention that around the Scituate Historical Society people who operate this, but they do a wonderful job, by the way. This light was extinguished in 1860 to make way for Minot Ledge, which is just a few miles further up the coast toward Boston Harbor. This is a big public attraction during the summer months. It's open 3 to 4 times every summer during the spring, the height of the summer, around the weekend of July 4th and the weekend of August 4th, during Scituate Heritage Days. There is a resident keeper here, and for that matter, this is the oldest, still continually occupied lighthouse station in the United States. still intact. Scituate Historical Society took this over in 1917 when it was sold by the federal government to the town of Scituate by Mr. Jamie Turner, who just, interestingly enough, went to City Hall, a town hall in Scituate, when he learned of the impending sale, and he got a check for $1,000. How many people can do that today without any questions asked, other than just say that the lighthouse was up for sale and the town needs this? It has since been completely restored. It's gone through at least 3 restorations since 1917 to maintain it to its original 1810-1811 appearance. It still works as an aid to navigation for the fishing fleet out of Scituate and for the private boaters. And the residents group on Cedar Point, adjacent to the lighthouse, are very proud of this place. It's one of the most visited lighthouses in the United States. I'm proud to be a part of it from time to time. And this is the breakwater. This is our turnaround point in Scituate Harbor. Absolutely beautiful coastline. By the way, this is called the Irish Riviera. From the great days of the pre-Depression years, right through World War II and up through the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, hundreds of Irish people who have ancestries dating back to the old sod, if you will, and to the old city of Boston, used to come here to escape the heat of the city, to enjoy the cool air, the cool water, and the beautiful views. Even today, many of the cottages along Cedar Point and in the neighborhoods around the lighthouse still have the ownerships passed down from father to son, mother to daughter, and so on. Beautiful harbor. We just noticed the boathouse for the Stellwagen National Marine Sanctuary, which has its offices here, right at the mouth of Scituate Harbor. And they overlook Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, which is off of Race Point in Cape Cod, keeping track of the whales, the porpoises, dolphins, keeping track of fish as best they can to determine the health of the population out there offshore, and to monitor the many, many ocean birds, or the pelagic birds that frequent the waters off of Cape Cod. Now we're looking at the Gurnet Point Lighthouse. This is on the Gurnet Point, about 4.5 miles over the sand from Duxbury Beach, which is accessed by way of the longest wooden uncovered bridge in the United States, the Powder Point Bridge. Here we're looking at the bluff where the Gurnet Lighthouse is. This lighthouse dates back to 1842, and at that point in time there were twin lights here. In fact, there were twin lights here right through 1923. You notice how fragile the land is surrounding the lighthouse. You can see how the wind and the waves and the weather, Mother Nature in general, scours away this bluff in very large chunks. At one point in time, a chunk some 20 to 30 feet deep from the edge just collapsed onto the edge of the bay below it. You notice to the left of the tower, there's an alarm warning system for the nuclear power plant at Manamet, which is just on the south side of Plymouth Bay. The Gurnet Light is a wooden structure, and Alan and I visited this last winter. You may have seen the Plymouth trip that we did on video. And this light was put together by ship's craftsmen. The light was assembled by craftsmen, joiners who built sailing ships, whaling ships, cargo ships, etc. The hand joinery inside this tower is nothing short of fantastic. And this does have a flashing white light with a red sector, and we are in that red sector zone right now. There is a mud bank just below the surface of the water, which prevents boaters from getting too close. If you get too close, you run aground. At one time, there was a duplex keeper's house out here until about 1960, and that year is quite prominent in Coast Guard history, when a lot of stations were demanned or destaffed and then were automated. The adjoining keepers' residences were torn down in many locations around the country, but now there's a concerted effort to try to save them. They couldn't save the duplex that was here. It was too ridden with termites and carpenter ants. It housed 2 families, and there were many families stationed here from one time to another during America's early history, dating back to the pre-Revolutionary War times. But the house that is here now is a ranch style that can accommodate 12 people. It's not very cheap to stay here for a week, but it can be arranged, and all you have to do is contact the Project Bug Light, Project Gurnet Light people all over the internet. There is an email address and a telephone on their website. But nevertheless, this is a beautiful tower. It has shingles covering the exterior. You can see the solar collector. And it's sited on top of Fort Andrew, which dates back to the American Revolution. One of the first keepers, John Thomas, was here, and he gave up the position and allowed his wife Hannah to take the position while he signed up for the Continental Army, working under George Washington and many other notables at that time, including Ethan Allen. He died during his service to the country. This is the Gurnet Point Life-Saving Station. If I might be frank about it, this is owned by Mr. Boonisar, B-O-O-N-I-S-A-R, who lives in Massachusetts. He is a bank executive, and he is one of the most enthusiastic aficionados of the United States Lighthouse and Life-Saving Service. And this building is equipped to make it look as if the crew had just stepped away. He does open it 2 or 3 times every summer to the public and to the neighbors around him, but it's more of a private getaway. It still has its boat and all the equipment that was relevant to the period of the life-saving service. And it was a very important rescue station at its time. Here we're looking at Saquish Beach, which connects from the Gurnet Point on a spit of land that extends well into Kingston Bay, Duxbury Bay, and Plymouth Harbor. Saquish is an American native name, which allegedly means place of many clams, many oysters, or what have you. Very popular summer residence for many people. I know a few people live out here during the summer. Very private community. It's highly restricted, unless you're a friend or a relative or a guest. Yeah, they prefer you stay away. This is the oldest cast iron caisson lighthouse in the United States. This is at the crossroads of Duxbury Bay, Kingston Bay, and Plymouth Harbor. This is the Duxbury Pier Lighthouse, dating back to the early 1870s. Many interesting keepers have been here. There was a Fred Small. There was a Harry Salter, who served here as punishment during World War II when he was a young Coast Guardsman. We don't know what he did wrong, but he didn't enjoy his stay out here, I'll tell you that. You can smell the hot dogs cooking over on the beach and in the surrounding neighborhoods, but no access to it. Now there's a breathtaking view. That's Duxbury Bay up there in the background. One of the most popular oyster companies here in the United States, Island Creek Oysters, is based up in Duxbury Bay. There's also a maritime school up inside the bay there. A great place for visiting sailing vessels during the summer. And Powder Point Bridge, of course, is way up in the distance, too far away to be seen with the naked eye. Over to the right is Clark's Island. One of the most popular guests out here in the 1950s was Mr. Truman Capote, the author of In Cold Blood, Breakfast at Tiffany's, and other very famous stories. Both those books, by the way, were converted into films. This was a stag station, no families out here. At one time, you'll notice, if you will, rather, before I expound on that, the group of rocks to the left. This was an ice-breaking device, so that in the winter months, when ice flows might have come down through Duxbury Bay on the northeast or northwest quadrant of this lighthouse, the flows would allegedly make contact with that block of granite stones and break them up before it did any damage to the lighthouse. And from this point of view, we'll probably get a look at the Miles Standish Monument over in Duxbury on a hill. There it is. We just got a brief glimpse. Notice off in the distance here is the Salem Power Plant. That's a good 10 miles up the bay from this lighthouse. This is the Graves Ledge. It's not named for the shipwrecks around it, and there are many, including the city of Salisbury, steamer Rose. There are many fishing boats that went aground here. The Mary O'Hara in 1941 in the month of February, where the crew literally froze to death. All but 5 went down. There were 19 men lost here. This is a carbon copy of a lighthouse up in Casco Bay, Maine. This is the Graves Ledge, named for Vice Admiral Thomas Graves, who was a founder of the village at Charlestown, now part of the city of Boston. the site of the Charlestown Navy Yard, the site of Bunker Hill, Breeds Hill, the Bunker Hill Monument, and many other interesting sites. You notice the condominiums in the distance. That's up on Revere Beach. There were a set of catwalks or ironways between the lighthouse and the granite building to the left. The granite building was used to store flammables, kerosene, oil, gasoline for any small motors, paint, varnish. So if there was anything flammable, you transferred it to the oil house for safekeeping until you needed it. We never kept flammables inside the tower. Too dangerous. This was a station that would have held as many as 3 men during the winter months, and there were 3 here in February 1941 when the Mary O'Hara, the Gloucester fishing schooner, went aground on a ledge nearby. That again was the same fishing schooner that lost 19 out of a 24-man crew. Very popular fishing spot, diving spot for lobsters, to visit shipwrecks, and a very good gathering place for seals during the winter months. We'll see ringneck seals, fur seals, harbor seals, gray seals. They're here in abundance back in the Northeast now. Now that the waters have been cleaned up, there are plenty of healthy fish as well. And that's one good thing about the outer islands of Boston Harbor, that many seals come here during the winter months. It's a landing place for cormorants, so you can see them sitting on the rocks drying their wings. They're a very primitive bird. They don't have an oil sac at the base of their tails to allow them to preen their feathers and coat them with that oil from that sac. So every few hours they have to haul themselves out of the water to dry their wings, otherwise these seabirds would drown. Our boat captain, Sam, on this voyage was gracious enough to get us as close as possible, and we got about a 270-degree view of this tower. This is the newest lighthouse in Boston Harbor, 1905 when it was completed. First keeper was Elliot Hadley, who previously served at Newburyport, Massachusetts. And the first appointed second assistant was Octavius Ramey. His father was Milton Ramey down at Minot Ledge. Between the father, the son, another brother, and a son-in-law of Milton Ramey, they had almost 70 years on the lighthouse service between them. This is one of the most interesting sites in Boston Harbor. This is the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority's sewage treatment plant. It was the site of a prisoner of war camp during the King Philip War, which lasted only 14, maybe 15 months, beginning around 1670, where thousands of Native Americans were imprisoned out here, and hundreds, many hundreds of them died of the elements. This was a site of the correctional center, the Deer Island Jail, or the Deer Island Correctional Center. Some people have corrected me on either one of those two labels. You notice the wind turbines, there are 4 different types out here. Or actually 3 different types. 2 of the similar 3-bladed turbine, and there's one that looks like a modern house fan on a post. And there's one that is a rather interesting spiral shape. And you notice the compressed view we have here of the Boston skyline. A little of the old and a little of the new. The second tallest building in Boston's history was the old John Hancock building. You'll see that to the right with a very thin steeple on it. The John Hancock Tower, the 1960 era tower to its left. The Prudential Tower with the tall radio antenna, making that the tallest building in Boston. Some 702 feet to the top of that antenna. There is a walkway that surrounds this sewage treatment station, and you might chuckle at that idea, but many people come out here for extended walks. It's about 2.5 miles, and on a good day like this, you'd have an absolutely amazing view of Boston Harbor from all directions. So there are 2 of the 3 wind blade type. And as we round this set of digesting eggs, which are 10 stories tall, these digest the solid matter of the sewage and is then later converted into a fertilizer, we see the circular wind turbine. There's a double hoop with a 3-blade propeller inside of it. And this is the new 1981-1982 Deer Island Lighthouse on the base of the old 1870 spark plug style that used to be here. The old lighthouse was taken down due to erosion of the iron plates, and because of mercury contamination. Mercury was in the lantern room. It was a substance that allowed the Fresnel lens to rotate, giving us a flashing effect. After many, many winters where the winds and the waves would beat against this tower, much of that mercury spilled inside the lantern room and eventually made its way down inside to the living quarters and the galley. The crew was evacuated from here about 1981. If it was determined that they were suffering from mercury poisoning, they had to be treated before it got worse. And Long Island here on Boston Harbor. This is the site of an 1890-era brick tower. It is a contagious disease hospital, or a chronic illness hospital, which houses primarily tuberculosis and AIDS patients. It's connected to the city of Quincy by the James Michael Curley Bridge, which was completed in 1947. And there it is on the right. The bridge may come down sometime soon, according to the Boston Globe, but that remains to be seen. It's too fragile to allow trucks and buses to go across anymore, being exposed to the salt air. And whereas we approach Boston's Logan International Airport, you can see a jet taking off. There's the control tower, said to be the tallest in the eastern United States and probably the second tallest in the world. I'm not too informed on that fact, but I'll take that from the people in the know. Here we see some jets maneuvering into and out of Logan Airport. This is one of the 20 busiest airports in the world. Flights arrive and depart here literally every 15 to 20 seconds, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from 3 different directions. Once again, we see the control tower, 21 to 22 stories tall, and an aircraft landing. Great view of that. Now you notice right there where the plane is landing, there's a yellow brick building. That is the Madonna Shrine over in East Boston on Orient Heights. The Queen Madonna, they call her. This is the landing pier on the north runway. It allows planes coming in from the south, from Washington, New York, New Jersey, and other southern points to make their way into Logan International Airport. They come in over South Boston using this pier as a guide light or a guideway with the flashing lights atop it on the red posts. Now, as you make our way back into Boston Harbor, we're looking at the container terminal. This is the Conley Terminal over in South Boston, adjacent to Castle Island, which is the home of Fort Independence. This is also the site of a former naval base. This was the South Boston Naval Annex, as it was called, up to the 1970s. The concrete silos you see over there are used to store concrete. Now we have a great view of the skyline. A lot of boat traffic in here on any given summer day, including today. East Boston side of the harbor coming back in. This is the former Cashman Shipyard. East Boston High School, over there on the right. This is still a very active shipyard. A lot of restoration goes on over here. Overhauling of ship's hulls, repainting, replating, rewelding. And occasionally they do manufacture a new boat every now and then. A rather industrial neighborhood, in contrast to what's on the other side of the harbor at South Boston, which is a very attractive place. This is a home for tugboats and working boats, barges. And we have the very famous Nantucket Lightship. This is the oldest of the 3 ships called Nantucket that is still afloat. This particular ship was built at the Pusey and Jones shipyard in Wilmington, Delaware. In the spring of 1936, when it was completed, it was commissioned by a friend, a late friend of mine, Miss Edith E. King. Her father at the time was the last commissioner of the United States Lighthouse Service from 1934 through 1939. And he was the guest speaker that day. The ship has had a rough time trying to find a home port that will keep it and maintain it. And on behalf of Boston Harbor Cruises, Chris, Rick, and Allison Nolan, it's my pleasure to have been able to do this along with the Raynham Channel cable access station. Without their permission, this would not have been possible. And it's to the credit of Boston Harbor Cruises that we have this ongoing series of Lighthouse tours, now in its 14th year. And if you folks want to learn more about how to come along, just simply go to the web and type in bostonharborcruises.com, click on Harbor Tours, then click on Lighthouse Tours, and you will get the schedule, the rates, the fees, and all the information you need. It's something that has been highly accepted, very well accepted by people from all over the world who come here. Many people specifically to do this trip. And again, I owe a word of thanks to Boston Harbor Cruises, the Nolan family. I can't say enough good about them.